City of Stevens Point Common Council meeting, recorded September 16, 2019.
We'll call the regular Common Council meeting of the City of Stevens Point to order.
Good luck.
I know we have a lot of people here to talk on a couple of different items. We have an overflow room with audio and video, but it's not two-way. So those in the overflow room, please pay attention. I will try and make sure that we check to see if anybody wants to speak on any other particular item. But Kelly, my assistant, has sheets that have been going around. They're white sheets that look like this. If you wish to speak on any agenda item, please fill one out. If you are supportive or opposed to any particular agenda item, you can do this as well without necessarily having to speak, and you can make your wishes known through this piece of paper as well. Okay, please join me in our salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Because we have quite a few people who wish to speak on quite a few agenda items, I will forego my traditional opening remarks and move right on to item number 3, which is persons who wish to address the council and mayor on a specific agenda item other than a public hearing should register their request at this time. Those who wish to address the common council during a public hearing are not required to identify themselves until the public hearing is declared open by the mayor. That is this sheet of paper right here. If you wish to speak on any agenda item, I need you to fill out one of these slips of paper, please. And when Kelly has all that squared away, she will bring them up here. We will start with persons who wish to address the mayor and council for up to 3 minutes on a non-agenda item. And we have 2 people who registered to speak. We will start with Lois Precourt. If you would come to the lectern, please, state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes.
Hear me? Don't start my 3 minutes yet.
Name and address for the record.
Lois Precourt, 3217 Regent Street, Stevens Point. I'm here to make an appeal regarding the sidewalk continuation project slated in my neighborhood in 2020. The map of the proposed project, although not updated to include Summer Street, was included in the August Public Works Director's report. I know that I'm a day late and $1 short on this appeal, and I sincerely believe that's a direct reflection on my alderperson's disinterest in any opinion that lends deference to her personal agenda. You might be reading about that story later. I live on the corner of Regent and Summers at the very northwest corner of the neighborhood slated for sidewalks next year. There are only 2 properties on Regent between Summers and Indiana. Time won't allow me to detail my concerns or the concerns of my neighbors, Tom and Pam Slegowski. We have many concerns. This is abundantly personal to us, and I hope to have an opportunity to be specific at some later date in another venue. My specific appeal is a request for consideration to reprioritize the money allocated for this project. First, there is very little foot traffic on Regent. We are 4 blocks from Washington School. There is no destination that would ever warrant children walking on Regent Street. There are no residences to the north. Any children walking to the few residences to the west walk down Jordan to Indiana because that's the most feasible route. Granted, sidewalks will facilitate the grade schoolers from Washington School a fast path to Ellis Stone, shoot a funeral home, probably Partners Pub and a liquor store, if that's a priority, but I kind of doubt it. We have a few dog walkers that like to walk the tree line on the north side of Regent Street. Even with a sidewalk, they'll still walk along the tree line for obvious reasons. Second, from a strategic point of view, it seems only reasonable that the money designated for Regent Street might be better used somewhere closer to Washington School. There are 3 streets, Roberts, Simonis, and Lorraine, directly across from Washington in a heavily populated neighborhood that are not slated for sidewalks in the 2020 plan. I spoke with a teacher at Washington School. She indicated that she would overwhelmingly support the immediate need for sidewalks in the streets across from the school. As I discussed my concerns with some friends, I was surprisingly approached by an educational assistant whose route is in the Bannock School area. She told me that the bus drivers who service Bannock are concerned for the safety of the kids in that area and wholeheartedly support the need for sidewalks there. In summary, I believe that all things considered, reprioritizing where the money could be spent is a reasonable request, and to that end, I would invite any interested city representatives to please come and visit our 2 properties on Regent Street, as well as the neighborhood directly across from Washington School, if for no other reason than to perhaps at least appreciate our dilemma and a proposed solution that would better serve the city's budget considerations and vision for accommodating the safety of our grade school kids. I look forward to having an opportunity to explain all of our individual concerns and personal circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Alderperson Tori Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. At last month's Common Council meeting, we voted unanimously to prohibit further actions towards a land swap with the county, which intended to explore the possibility of moving county facilities and jail to the East Park Commerce Center. Since then, I have met with the county executive and have been working to understand the county decision-making process, as well as previous plans for city-county facilities downtown. While I understand that the county has provided information to the public about various options for government facilities over the past decade, the land swap illuminated the fact that communication goals are not being achieved. The question I have now is, how do we move forward? I have provided to the alders and city clerk for the record a set of plans for a downtown campus created by Venture Architects in 2017. Also included are reuse plans for the county city building we are now in. These plans have been referred to by some as the Finn plan. Excuse me. I've also included a county board resolution dated April 18, 2017, approving these plans by a vote of 22-3, a supermajority. These plans were a response to the November 2016 referendum when voters rejected a new 3- to 4-story building that included a jail and courthouse estimated to cost $78.5 million. Once I found out about the 2017 plans before you, I wondered why there was no mention of them when the land swap idea was brought forward. I have shown these plans to 3 former alders, to Alder Phillips, and to a number of people in the community who are very engaged, and none were familiar with them. My question is why, especially when they appear to address most of the issues that have been debated again and again for more than a decade. My crash course in county procedures and decision-making has certainly been eye-opening and frustrating. While I have far too much information to cover in 3 minutes, I wish to leave you with these main points for now. In 2016, the Board of Supervisors established that new county government buildings would be in a downtown location. Then Alder Wiese was one of the supervisors who voted for that resolution. As mayor, Mike Wiese has a seat on the County Space and Properties Committee and may vote on county city building decisions. The 2017 plans before you now were approved by the Board of Supervisors. The board also approved the architects and timeline. The county capital improvement project budget included funding for new facilities according to this plan, and that budget was approved by the Board of Supervisors. Every indication is, from looking at resolutions and budgets and reviewing what limited meeting minutes there are, these plans were moving forward until June 2019, when the 2020 to 2025 capital improvement plan showed the government facility building and courthouse remodel project were to be determined. The CIP was adopted in August 2019. I call upon the leadership of this council to help redirect and open up a more transparent and engaged discussion about city-county facility plans that already exist. That begins here with these plans that were years in the making and gained widespread political support. I hope that you will review them closely, and I look forward to further discussions and hopefully collaboration with the county on this very important project. Thank you.
Thank you. And that agenda item is exhausted. I realized as we were going into this that I forgot to do a roll call, so I'll ask the clerk to do that now, please.
Jennings.
Here.
Shore.
And did anyone hear from Alder Shore that he wouldn't be here tonight? Okay, we'll mark that absent.
Nabel.
Here.
Zarazua.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Slowinski. Here. Kneebone.
Here.
Dugan.
Here.
Dalton.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Morrow.
Here.
Thank you. And for those listening on the radio, I want to point out that all of the alderpersons that are present now were present at the beginning of the meeting, so we had a quorum to operate everything.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, a message from Alder Shore said he apologizes, he's running late because of car issues.
Okay. We'll note that, and when he gets here, we'll make sure that the record shows that. Now, item number 5 is a presentation that I'm happy to do, and we love to have these representatives here every year. We have Morgan Yaidi and Raven Knipple, who are the UWSP current student president and vice president, and Alder Shore has just entered the room. I will invite them up so you can introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about things you have planned for 2019-2020.
All right, thanks for having us. My name is Morgan Yaidi, and I am the student body president at UW-Stevens Point right now. This is my vice president, Raven Knipple, and we just wanted to come and introduce ourselves and talk about a few initiatives that we're doing this year that are kind of relevant to what you all do. The first one that I will mention is that one of our biggest initiatives and like big goal areas is inclusivity on our campus. And so one thing we really want to do is do a like Pride Month, Pride Week legislation/proclamation that would be recognized by our university and have our pride flag risen during those times. Something really cool that we're doing right now that is in the works with the help of you all and the help of the mayor was to have a pride crosswalk, which will be going in on our campus in October, I believe. So that's really cool, and I just wanted to give an update on that. I will let Raven say a few things and talk about some more things we're doing.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Raven Knipple, Vice President of the Student Government Association at UWSP. So give a couple updates on the university as a whole right now. I'm sure some of you have heard and have gone through the couple excruciating years of the university with our enrollment and programs being eliminated, the infamous Point Forward and Point Forward 2.0 now. So I just want to give an update on what's going on with that. This past summer, we had multiple meetings, 2 meetings that were probably about 2 days of 16 hours total of just meeting basically on strategic planning, talking about the failures of the implementation of Point Forward, how was that passed down to the university and the transparency behind that, and as well as addressing what do we want our university to look like going forward from this. And so a group of faculty members, students, and administration were all present at those meetings and having their voices heard talking about the future of that. And so as a student on there, I felt that those talks are going really well. We're trying to figure out what the next step is going to be right now, but I would love to give you more updates as those processes go along. Another set of meetings we had this summer was a reconciliation meetings with specifically with the chancellor and the provost, along with concerned faculty members, university staff members, and students to talk about basically getting everything off of our chest, figuring everything out so we can emotionally move forward from this. So we put everything on the side. How can we work together to put forward behind us and, no pun intended, move forward from this? Those meetings went very, very, very well, in my opinion, as a student there. We're continually having conversations with our provost and our chancellor and leadership on the Common Council about how we can work together to make sure all of our voices are heard and make sure the university looks best for students on campus. So I just wanted to give an update on that. And forgetting Albertson Hall. Perfect. Yes, another thing that the university is getting a lot of attention on is our capital projects. Albertson Hall being one of the big ones is, I'm sure a lot of you have heard, is not in the best scenario and cases right now. But we actually finally got some good news on that. The university's been promoting it, so hopefully you guys have heard about this by now, but the UW system is granting us $2 million on a design and architecture phase for Albertson Hall and the Sundial. And so that gets us really excited, and the upper administration on campus is super excited about this as well, because it's showing that the UW system is getting behind and pushing forth for Albertson Hall to be enumerated in the next biennium. So we're super excited about that. We've talked to a couple of the Board of Regents that we've met this past couple of weeks. They've been talking about Albertson Hall and how it's been way overdue to get enumerated and all this stuff. So super excited to announce that, and hopefully by 2021 we'll find out if it's enumerated. So there we go.
That's all we have, I think.
So, Madam President, if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about SGA or either of your positions or the things that are going on campus, where can they get in contact with you?
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So you can totally shoot me an email at sga.president@uwsp.edu. That is probably the best way to contact me. We also have weekly Senate meetings in the Legacy Room in the Dreyfus University Center on campus at 6:15. So you're always welcome to swing by and listen to what we're up to.
What day of the week is that?
Thursdays.
Thursday at 6:15.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And we've always had a pretty strong relationship with the university and the city, and I know Raven and Morgan have been in my office. We've already had a couple of meetings talking about some of the cool things that we want to get accomplished this year. I also look forward to, I know this was a short presentation, but we're going to be doing our Talking Point TV show, talk about a little more of those things more in depth. And by the way, I haven't heard anything about Albertson Hall, so I'm glad to see that's moving forward. Last I heard, I was in Madison with the chancellor lobbying for some money, and I'm glad to see that you guys got some. Thank you again.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Item number 6 is our consent agenda. Is there any alderperson wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. President Johnson?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Consent agenda.
I second.
Yes.
Seconded by Alderperson Morrow. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Morrow. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slowinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0.
11-0, that is adopted. With council permission, because we've got over 24 people already registered to speak on the next agenda item, and we have people from out of town on at least 2 of our further down agenda items, I would like permission to move items 15 and 19 ahead in the agenda to the next items. Is there any objection to that? Okay, seeing no objection, we will go to item number 15 now. Alderpersons, that's page 114 of your packet. The discussion and possible action regarding an easement agreement and compensation with American Transmission Company for Kosciuszko Park in the Erickson Natural Resources area. That item is in front of you, Director Kramer. Do you have anything to add? For those of you who don't know, this is Director Dan Kramer. He's our newest Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, replacing Tom Schrader, and has done a fabulous job since taking office.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What's before you tonight is we currently have a high-voltage electric transmission line that runs through Kosciuszko Park in the Erickson Natural Area. We've got an agreement on file that dates back to 1981 that's a little less formalized than the easement that's before you tonight. Ultimately, this new easement agreement clarifies the width of that right or that easement within that park and that Erickson Natural Area to be 45 feet. The current agreement allows them to basically clear to what they need to. We do have 2 representatives here tonight from ATC, which is why we asked to have this a little earlier. If there's questions on the actual vegetation plan, ultimately what they're going to be doing is they're going to be removing some vegetation to allow for pollinator gardens to be installed in a couple areas. We did take the Park Commission out there to do a tour and review that. It does follow along with what some of the Audubon Society's already been doing. This also will remove, currently we have the ability with city staff to do some management underneath that transmission line with removal of vegetation, which we don't do because of the safety training standards. So this agreement brings it up to date with some of that type of arrangements with the current safety standards that are on file. We did check with the Audubon Society. They've endorsed the plan, as well as the McDill Pond Association, and we did mail letters to 40 neighboring residents. So Park Commission and city staff recommendation is to approve this easement agreement and to create a sinking fund with the $20,000 compensation that can be used for the Kosciuszko Park and the Erickson Natural Area. I think that's all I've got, unless you guys got something
Thank you,
to add.
Director. Does anyone have questions for the Director? Alderperson Kneebone.
A little concerned about the herbicide use. I've been reading some things lately about if you start adding a lot of herbicides into an environment, it can affect all the other species. And if this is intensely managed for birds, how are you going to protect the bird community?
Sure. Adam, I don't know if you want to take this question in terms of what you guys do specifically, but it's going to be a pretty close collaboration between city staff and our foresters, as well as Adam. But Adam, if you want to add to that as well.
Yeah, I'm Adam Hominiak, Vegetation Specialist with American Transmission Company. So that's a very common question, concern for herbicide use. So what we currently have there is a lot of invasive species. It's highly overgrown, and so there are several ways to control vegetation. One is being very manual, intensive, hand by hand, removing plugs of trees that you don't want. And so this plan has taken into consideration both parties in that we're trying to limit the amount of herbicide use over time. And so right now, yes, there's a lot of invasive species. So we're looking at actually implementing some herbicide use that's already going on in the park. So there is some that is going on. Again, to get pollinator habitat, you have to replace that, what was currently there, with something that is compatible. If you don't, the stuff that you don't want is going to grow right back in. So our plan is going to work directly with the City Parks Department to figure out what we're going to use, when we're going to use it, and how often we're going to use it. And so we are, over time, the goal is to limit the amount of herbicide over time. But without it, unfortunately, the plan that's in place, we are trying to really make sure that a lot of the compatible species stay in there. And the tall growers outcompete the compatible species. And so without it, this plan would be very difficult to implement. Just like what the Parks Department is doing right now with their pollinator habitat, without the use of that, it'd be really hard to establish that pollinator habitat. Once we get compatible species in there, they really do outcompete the incompatible species. But it's just the initial, we really haven't done anything in the park probably for, I'd say 10 to 15 years. It's been that limited. So it is highly overgrown.
Did that answer your question, Alderperson?
You thought of something a little less chemical, like goats, for example? Or will they not work fast enough? I mean, a lot of cities are using goats to get rid of invasive species, and that doesn't damage. I mean, there's wet areas and who knows? But. Yeah,
so I'm not 100% familiar with the use of goats, but just through conversations with others, it is very labor intensive. You have to move the goats, you have to corral the goats, and in fact, it can be a little bit hard on the environment as well, because they do trample some things as well. So, but people have been successful with it in pasturing situations, but I think in our scenario, especially with the topography out there, with you've got the water, you've got trails. I just think that it would probably do more harm than good. So.
Alderperson, let me follow up with this. Director Kramer, we are very fortunate to have a pretty knowledgeable Parks Commission, and probably the most knowledgeable person I know in regards to plants is on that commission, Bob Freckman. Was there any concern from Mr. Freckman in regards to the use of the herbicides and the plan that was proposed?
No, there was not.
Okay. We also have, I think most of you are familiar with Dr. Kent Hall with the Audubon Society, and his wife Susan also serves on our Parks Commission. Were there any concerns from Sue in regards to the plan?
There was not, and Kent was also included as the rep from the Audubon Society, who shared it with their committee.
Okay. Does that help a little bit, Alderperson?
With the blessing of Dr. Freckman and Dr. Hall, that'd be good enough for me.
All right. Thank you. I thought we might cut to the chase there a little bit. Alderperson Nabel.
I'd just like to ask, have we ever thought of utilizing our students that are working in those areas on campus? My brother works with groups of people at a lake that we are at, and there's a big group of people that they go in and waders and they pull out the loose streak, and they do this on a regular basis and work at it steadily. And it may take time, but they're at least not using the herbicides. And I think that it does worry me using herbicides. I mean,
Sure, and I know we've
have
done...
that number of people that could go in and do things that sometimes I just wish we were doing more of those when we have the capacity with our university students and others that are really very much naturalists.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea, Alderperson. I know when I was on the County Parks Commission and president there, we had paid groups, volunteer groups, paid volunteer groups, to pull things like Eurasian water milfoil and the garlic mustard and things like that. And they managed to do a lot of it, but it was often difficult to find the volunteer groups without some sort of compensation to do that. I'll have Director Kramer look into doing some of that and see if we can't find a reasonable
just a
solution
thought,
there too.
And this will also be ongoing, though, not in terms of the chemical application, but the management. I mean, it's a long-term approach, not necessarily short-term, as you know.
You might need to do the chemicals first and then to help maybe do a little more.
We're always looking for volunteers in certain capacities, but as you know, volunteer staff turns over a lot, so.
Yep.
Right. Okay, any other questions from any of the alders? President Johnson.
Just a comment, I know people get squeamish about the use of herbicides and pesticides, fungicides, et cetera. We don't like to use them at my site where I work because we have 94 groundwater wells and we're constantly testing groundwater. However, in controlling buckthorn, you got to do it. You got to cut them, you got to apply the herbicide, allow that to go into the root to kill it, and otherwise you're never going to get buckthorn out of there. That's the way it has to be done, so.
Thank you. Alderperson Dalton.
Yeah, I share a lot of the concerns about the herbicide use, and I've talked with Director of Public Works and former Director Schrader about this. And when you're looking, I understand the manual labor component of it and the desire for a clean seed bed. A common organic practice is using occultation, which is simply spreading a black silage piece of plastic over it and gives you an equally good clean seed bed, and requires probably equal labor, if not less, and is significantly better type of labor in terms of the application of a herbicide, which has been proven to have long-term health effects. So if it's terrible for employees, it's probably not good for that very environment as well. So I will look forward to pursuing that type of strategy in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Helminiak. I would be looking to entertain a motion then. President Johnson.
Motion to approve the easement as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Slawinski. Discussion? Hearing none, could we get a roll call, please?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Darazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
11-0.
11-0, that is adopted. The next item that we had moved to the top, I was informed by the city attorney that we need to do item 18 before we do item 19. So next up on your agenda is item 18, and that is the purchase of land in East Park Commerce Center with parcels identified. Alderperson Phillips.
Move approval to purchase that property.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Shore. Discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll, clerk.
Morrow.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0.
That is adopted. Now, item number 19 is the sale of approximately 13 acres of land located east of EM Cops Drive within the East Park Commerce Center with the same parcels that we just identified to Lineage SCS Wisconsin LLC. We have a representative from Lineage here. Did you want to speak, sir, or do you have, are you available for just questions?
Sure. My name is Les Dobie. I'm representing Lineage Logistics, 5700 EM Cops Drive, Stevens Point. And I'm here for any questions, and I can make a few comments as well.
Go ahead and make your comments, sir, if you'd like.
All right. So you guys, if you've been on the council for a few years, you see me every couple of years come up here and talk about our development. But there's a couple of things that I think need to be enunciated that may not float to the surface for common knowledge. You can certainly identify that our tax base has increased probably 3 times from where we initially started. We also, depending on the count that was given when we started the project, we've either quadrupled or quintupled our employee base. And here's the real thing in the city of Stevens Point is we are not a burden in the TIF district. We have repurchased the land that was initially given to us. We have reimbursed the city for all of the infrastructure that was there. And we also, what wasn't in this town 5 years ago was $4.5 million of wages or $6.3 million of wages and benefits. And besides being a positive economic impact, if you are in our facility, you will see that we aren't just economically involved in this community, but we are really emotionally involved, and we have a real empathetic group. As a matter of fact, in September, we have 30 projects for the 30 days of September where we're giving back. We give back thousands of hours of volunteer time, and we are really involved in the community, and I think I just want to underscore that when you're making your decisions going forward.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Alderpersons, what are your wishes? Alder Slawinski.
Move to sell approximately 13 acres of land located east of EM Cops Drive within the East Park Commerce Center to Lineage Service Cold Storage.
Okay. Seconded by Alderperson Phillips. Discussion? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
11-0.
11-0. That is adopted. We will move back on to the regular format of the agenda. Item number 7. However, before we get started with item number 7, I just want to lay down a few of the ground rules. We want everybody to have a chance to speak. This is obviously an important issue to a lot of people, so we want to afford everybody their opportunity to speak. It's my understanding that at committees, some things got a little contentious, maybe even a little disrespectful. We don't want to see that happen. That may not have been during the meeting, could have been outside afterwards. But please, just be respectful of everybody's opinion. Be as succinct as possible with your comments. We have over 24 people that have registered to speak tonight. I know that there were several letters that came in through various offices. We tried to get as many of those to the alderpersons as possible. At least the ones I saw were all in favor of this, but I did get some after the last email was sent when Clerk Petruski had left. This one I'm not sure about. Ellis Construction. That one was done. We have one from the Portage County Historical Society, signed by Tim Siebert, the president. And then just as I walked into the meeting, I got handed one from Dave Ekman, who used to be employed at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point in regards to economic development, currently works for the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. This letter also speaks in favor of city's participation in the redevelopment of the Fox Theater. And
in addition to that, I've received 6 other letters in support. One from Alex Ingersoll, Associate Professor of Media Studies at UWSP. Another from Brandon Miller, also in support. Ann Sell. Warner, Becky and Scott Henning of Stevens Point, John Hartman, and last but not least, Jeremy Solon. All of those letters were in favor, so we received a letter, total of 10 letters.
All of the letters, regardless of when we got them, if they came to the clerk's office or my office, they are going to be available through the clerk's office. So if anybody wants to read the entirety of those letters, you are welcome to do so at the clerk's office. Generally, it was pretty easy to determine which ones were in favor and which ones that were against. The ones that we just mentioned were all speaking in favor of the support that was recommended through the Finance Committee. So with that, we will begin. I'll have everyone come up as your name is called, come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, please, and then whatever relevant comments that you have. Again, please be respectful because with over 24 people, even at 3 minutes apiece, that's going to be quite a while. So I would ask to keep your comments brief. If you need more time, take more time, but we're going to set the timer for 2 minutes. When the timer goes off, you know that's a 2-minute warning. So if you can finish up, don't feel you have to take the whole 2 minutes if you don't need it. You can't share your time with someone else. Just try and get up and speak to the best of your ability on your feelings. First one up, we have Adam Gruhl. I don't know if everybody here knows Adam, but if you haven't seen the latest video with Adam and Mr. Charlie Behrens from the Manitowoc Minute, it's available on YouTube. It's called The Old Wisconsin Jubilee.
Yeah. Adam Gruhl, 490 Cashmere Road, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So yeah, I'm a professional musician, which leads me to various communities around the country. And I've seen personally similar projects to the New Fox happen in communities. And it's very evident that it leads to the greater well-being of the community in many different arenas, particularly in terms of cultivating various other businesses and artistry around the community. So, you know, having seen this around the country, I'd really, really love to see it happen here in Stevens Point. That's my brief comment.
Thank you. Next up, Pamela Ludke. If anybody's in the overflow room, I'll call your name and I'll allow ample time for you to get across the hall.
Pamela Lutke, 818 County Road K, Custer, Wisconsin. In 2008, I represented a Point Dance Ensemble in a collective conversation with numerous area art organizations. The group met quarterly and was the committee that was associated to the Arts Alliance, which is now named and called Create Portage County. The group was called the Round Table. During our meetings, area art organizations discussed items to foster innovative steps to strengthen our community through the arts for the future. The Round Table members participated in a strategic planning process that organized and prioritized our visions and goals. Fox Theater was part of the strategic discussion. We envisioned a central hub for the arts, a place to create and present work. The Fox Theater is a historical landmark and an ideal space to continue the vision that is already in place. Create has established a solid example of creating a hub for the arts. I asked the City of Stevens Point to support our community's request to invest in the future of a new Fox and the direction of fulfilling the visions for a vibrant and art community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, and I'm going to butcher this because it's in cursive, Lina Matesi? Oh, I'm sorry.
Lena, like you're leaning on something.
Yes.
Lena Matesi, 267 White Oak Avenue, Plover. I teach at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. I am in support of Create Portage County's request for a new Fox. As a UWSP faculty member and director of the MBA program, I'm excited about the opportunities that a new Fox will create for our students and for our community. Create has piloted the use plans for a new Fox via the Idea Center for the last 3 years, and the results are significant. As of about 5 months ago, the Idea Center had provided support to more than 54 startups, 14 remote workers, 4 new emerging co-ops, 27 community businesses and organizations, 26 educational programs, and 17 meetups engaging hundreds of residents across central Wisconsin. Create users are doing work in 34 states and Canada. This data compiled and presented by an Idea Center intern pursuing a degree in my academic unit. I wish you could have seen her face when she described to me, glowing, how much this internship had helped her clarify her passion and think about her future. The impact of a new Fox will be counted in both impressive aggregate data like I just read and in individual lives, Danielle's individual life. In addition to teaching and directing, I help a variety of organizations in central Wisconsin with board and leadership development. This year, I had the privilege of working with Central Rivers Farmshed to help clarify its organizational strategy. Over several months, we used the Idea Center for 5 large group meetings as we dreamed about the future of the organization. The value of the ease of use and affordability of the Idea Center cannot be underestimated because the space was easy to reserve, easy to navigate, very low cost. We were able to focus on the important stuff, collaborating to create an even brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Annie Wetter.
Hi, Annie Wetter, 485 Casimir Road. And what I want to appeal to you is that the Fox Theater project has the potential to really solidify Stevens Point as not just the county seat, but the cultural seat of our county. And that as a resident officially of the town of Hull, I rely on Stevens Point as a resource for my family, for visitors, and for students at the university to provide them with an opportunity to experience diverse cultural opportunities. And I feel that all families growing up here in the community need more opportunities for diverse cultural experiences. And without something like the Fox Theater, we have to resort much more to going to Madison, going to Chicago, going to Minneapolis for some of those cultural opportunities. And that then limits the number of families who can afford both the time and the resources to have those experiences. And the Fox Theater project really helps our residents have, like Adam said, greater well-being, and in my opinion, also greater intellectual, cultural development.
Thank you. Next up, Jim Featherston. Jim Featherston. We'll wait. There's Jim. At least we know the audio works.
Good evening. My name is Jim Featherston. I'm at 3124 Feltz Avenue in Stevens Point, and I'm also the president and CEO of Warzala Publishing here in town. And as a major employer, I think there's a key point that I want to make, that we need to attract talented people to come to Stevens Point and stay in Stevens Point. And I am firmly in support of Create Portage County's effort to turn the Fox into an Idea Center. I think it will be a very big help in that regard. Getting skilled people in town is getting tougher and tougher. As you all know, we have a pretty low unemployment rate here. So we need to do everything we can, I think, to bring people here and keep them. So the other point I wanted to make is the business community, I think, is very well poised to invest in this project. And I think it's essential, though, that the city council come through and provide the support to get this off the ground. If that happens, I really feel strongly that my peers in the business community will step up and we will make the investment to meet the capital amount that we need to really do what we need to do with the Idea Center. So thank you for listening, and I hope we get your support.
Thank you. Next up, Carrie Wynn.
Hi, I'm Carrie Wynn, 624 Sue Marie Avenue, Stevens Point, and I'm a lifelong member of resident of this community, and I'm also a university representative, so I'm kind of, I guess, wearing two hats today. I've always felt that Stevens Point is a very creative, collaborative, and bold community, and I think that Portage County has just elevated what we already are. In a few short years, CREATE has done just so much to add to the vibrancy in our community. Just imagine, I think, what more they could do if they had a place right on Main Street in the Old Fox. CREATE is something to a lot of people, and that's one of the things that I like most about it, which also makes it really hard to summarize what CREATE actually is. But I'll just give you a few examples from my own experience. My family has benefited personally just from some of the activities and experiences that CREATE offers in the community. House concerts, there's the Tinker Time program, Levitt AMP, which I know is just getting more and more popular every year. Just a couple weeks ago, my daughter and her entire school came to the Idea Center to talk to a number of entrepreneurs and talk about an inspiring opportunity for these young people to hear others talk about taking their dreams and their big ideas and turning them into successful business ventures. And I think they're going to hear more and more of this. It was wonderful. I see our students at the university benefiting, as Lena talked about. For one thing, they get daily opportunities to be exposed to creative ideas that are taking place and interesting discussions within the Idea Center. They participate in internships, and they get to participate in activities that bring them closer to the community, and frankly, it makes it much more likely that they are going to end up staying here, raising families here, and becoming contributing members of our community. And that's, to me, one of the most exciting things. I think just actually at the meeting last week, hearing so many students or recent graduates talk about how they simply wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Idea Center and CREATE Portage County. The Idea Center is more than just a place, and CREATE is more than just an organization. This is about community, and it's about accelerating big ideas that many, in many other cases might not see the light of day. It also puts Stevens Point on the map. It I think, will lead to a lot of other more exciting opportunities for this community if you support this initiative. What CREATE has done and accomplished is just amazing, and with limited amount of visibility through the current Idea Center. Just imagine what the Idea Center can be if it's on Main Street in the Fox. This is a great story that the community is ready to tell. So I ask you to support this initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Sarah Brish.
Sarah Brish, representing the Stevens Point Area Convention and Visitor Bureau at 340 North Division. As the Executive Director of the Stevens Point Area Convention and Visitor Bureau, there are 3 reasons why I urge all of you to support this $250,000 investment for a new Fox. First, the newly reimagined space will fill a niche need for alternative venues here in the Stevens Point area and will allow considerably more events to take place. As an organization who spends most of its time attracting and bringing more events, workshops, and groups to the community, I think it is very important that we invest in this space. For decades, the Stevens Point Area Convention and Visitor Bureau has been attracting groups for the economic benefit of this community, really under the strategic watch of our leaders, including Mayor Wiesa. Second, a new Fox will provide aspiring entrepreneurs the space and resources needed to launch their new business ventures. The retention of these tax-paying citizens is critical to the long-range success of the area. Recent business startups are flourishing in the Stevens Point area as a result of Create Portage County and the Idea Center. Since launching in 2016, over 50 business startups have happened right here in this community. Many of these startups are shining stars and great examples that directly shape our community and the vitality of tourism here, including offerings such as Agra, Tapt, Siren Shrubs, Assembly, and others, just to name a few. Third, we are ecstatic at the Stevens Point Area Convention and Visitor Bureau simply about the programming that's taking place through the Idea Center and facilitated by Create Portage County. The staff and board of directors has proven that they are committed to making Portage County a hub for arts, creativity, and culture. So much so that they have everyone around the state watching what's going on here in Portage County. Their efforts are undeniably making this area more viable to outsiders and a better place to live, play, and stay. From the Convention and Visitor Bureau's standpoint, if you build a place that people want to live, you build a place that people want to visit. Thank you for considering this project.
Thank you. Next up, Karen Sig.
Hello, my name is Karen Sig. I live at 125 Virginia Circle, Stevens Point. I'm here tonight to ask the Common Council to approve the funds for a new Fox project. The nonprofit organization I work for, Recycling Connections, has been based out of Stevens Point since 1981. But we're currently a partner with Create Portage County to help locate, excuse me, with part of one of their projects, possible recycled content feedstock for their new large 3D printer. And we have helped divert compostable organics generated during their Levitt Amp concert series this past summer. Recycling Connections, we've used the Idea Center for staff's brainstorming meetings, board meetings, and as a location for our free community presentation series this spring. Create Portage County seeks out collaborations with other nonprofits and is a definite asset to our community. On an individual level, my husband and I have lived in Portage County for the majority of our lives and have been home and/or property owners in the city of Stevens Point for over 34 years. And we want to express our personal support for the city to invest in this important project. And while these two scenarios represent my profession and my home perspectives, my most passionate request for your support comes from serving as a Create board member for over about 6 years. Together with Greg Wright, our awesome executive director, our board members have researched, investigated, and dreamed about how to make our community even better through innovation, creativity, and collaboration. The current and very successful Idea Center is a key product of that hard work. To some, this new Fox project may sound like an attempt to save a historic or iconic downtown building and facade, but in reality, it's to support a thriving economic development project that has already demonstrated proven results. Your support for a new Fox will help transition the current Idea Center to a new location designed for its diverse programming and will provide all of us with a community hub for innovation and creativity. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Speaking of 3D printers, next up, Barry.
Hello, my name is Barry Calnan. I live at 2101 Falcons Cove in Stevens Point, and I love it here. And the reason I say that is because I've only been here about 2.5 years, going on 3 years. The reason I came here is because I am a +1 from someone who came to work at Century Insurance. I had a professional business that I did in Houston, Texas, and I brought that along with me. I am a engineering designer and a CAD person for 3D, but I also have a 3D printing consultant. Not a lot of that was here when I came to Stevens Point. With the help of Create, I've been able to give back to a community that I've come to love, actually, because of its openness, its creativity, and the ability for people to express what they enjoy doing and the businesses that they can foster in this environment. I'm, of course, on the board of Create, so I'm a little bit biased, but what I see happening in this community is you, as a city, have brought many people here and strived to have the best people come to work in a lot of big companies. You also get someone else to come with them. And if those people are happy, you're going to stay. If they're not happy, if the +1 is not happy, they're not going to stay. Whether they have interest in art, whether they have interest in running their own business, whether they have interest in any type of creativity, Create Portage County is there for them. I would say it's integral in why my wife and I have decided that this is a place that we feel we can stay. And we've lived pretty much all over the world. I would like to obviously have you go ahead and say yes to the proposal tonight, but I think the most important thing is Create is doing a wonderful job today. I think we could do a better job if the facilities that we had were up to the par of what we're doing as a service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Greg Wright.
Greg Wright, 1217 Franklin Street. I'm mostly going to say something quickly and answer questions if you have them later about the project. But I listened very carefully to the Finance Committee meeting, and one thing I heard you all talk about was money, that there's a limited amount of money, and that's the big thing that is difficult in this project. So I want to say two things about that. One is, one way to grow revenue is to tax people. The other is to add value to your community. We have a number of examples you've heard talked about from new businesses on Main Street, new businesses other places, people who have bought homes within walking distance of the Idea Center who have fixed up those homes. We can talk about economic impact that is raising the tax base of this community as you invest in us. The other big thing is efficiency. Efficiency is a great way to reduce costs, and as you're listening to us, you should notice that we are the organization that does entrepreneurship in the community. We're the organization that does anything around diversity issues in the community. We're the organization that does workforce attraction and retention. We're the organization that does public art for the community. We do placemaking for the community. If you go to Wausau, you will find 6 different organizations that call us their peer. Just us, right? They all have bigger staffs than we do and all have bigger budgets than we do. We are doing a lot of work for the community, often in partnership. I know all your department chair heads. Again, we've worked very closely on a number of different projects, from the Lullaby Lot project to writing a letter of support for other housing developments that have happened in the area. We are in a very efficient organization that is very low cost for the city. So the low cost and the ability to add revenue are both reasons why it's worth investing in us.
Thank you. Tyler Marchant.
Tyler Marchant, 1726 Pine Street, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I'm a professor in the theater and dance department at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, and I'm speaking to you tonight to urge you to support Create's proposal for a new Fox. In my experience, community follows creativity, collaboration, and opportunity. Create is proving that all of this is possible in this community today. Reinvesting and reusing the Fox Theater is a gateway to more energy and ingenuity in our downtown and the entire community. It will help drive innovation. I've personally had many conversations with people looking to launch new businesses and grow current businesses while using the Create space and support services Create provides. I see potential as well for the university community, professors and student artists to function within the walls of a new Fox. We just need the chance. People want to see and experience that energy in our downtown. We need to support this proposal and keep drawing new thinking, new business, and new creators into our community if we are going to continue to find creative solutions to our ongoing challenges. I like the vision of what our collective future can be, building on the many successes Create has already forged. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Marchant. And I'm not calling these up in any order. They're random. It's really luck of the draw. I know Greg probably would have wanted to go later, but he'll be available if we have questions at the end. Ann?
Ann Marchant, 1726 Pine Street. I teach English as a second language at SPASH, and I'm here to ask you to support Create's proposal for a new Fox. As a teacher of a diverse group of students, I see on a daily basis how important it is for people to have a community where they feel that they have a voice. Create's proposal of creativity, connection, and collaboration at a new Fox will provide this kind of inviting space for all ages that will spark new ideas as disparate people cross paths in downtown Stevens Point. I believe it's really important that Create find a home downtown. You just need to come downtown for a summer Saturday farmers market, for Arts Walk, or 11 Amp concert to see that our community wants to come downtown. We want to come together, talk together, create together, and learn from each other. I see a new Fox as a hub that creates that downtown energy every day of the week.
Thank you very much. Paula Schleiss?
Paula Schleiss, 2315 Conan Street, Village of Whiting. I am here as a member of the Create Portage County Board of Directors in support of the request for $250,000 to assist in the demolition of the unsound portion of the Fox Theater building and the commitment, hopefully, of $250,000 to assist in the retention of the front facade and reconstruction of the building to provide a new home for the Idea Center. My family moved to Stevens Point in 1963 when I was a teenager. Yes, I'm old. I remember a vibrant downtown with many stores and businesses. I remember spending time on Main Street with friends shopping. I remember the mall being built and the promise of great things to come. I watched the Main Street businesses wither and die. I watched the mall fail and be demolished. But in the last decade or so, I have watched a Main Street being reborn. Storefronts are filled with diverse businesses that support our local economy and offer employment to our citizens. During this time, the Idea Center was established and is thriving as an opportunity for our citizens to invent, design, network, and create new opportunities. We need a new home, and we belong on Main Street. Following the path of other cities in mall creations and other decisions has not worked for us. We are unique. We are a city of developers, adventurers, and innovators. We love having a centered community, and the Idea Center will give us a base of operations as a more creative, engaged, and valuable resource to help build a prosperous future for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Featherston. I'm sure she's in the next room. Sherry? She's coming. I heard it.
Yep.
Should I check not to speak, but I'll speak, because I'm that person.
Sorry, I probably could have put you a little closer together, but as I said earlier.
That's okay. I thought I had checked the box not to speak, but just to add to what everyone else is saying, and also to talk as a relative newcomer to the community, my husband and I have been here for a little over 8 years now. And I've been thrilled in the time I've been here to see the changes in the downtown. It looked a little ghost towny to me when I first came to town, and we've experienced life in a lot of different places. And I continue to be thrilled by the changes that are happening in this town and the growth and the prosperity that seems to be coming our way. And I think the Idea Center being downtown and having the downtown be more of a shining example of what we can be is a great idea. So please vote for us.
Thank you. And I saw that. I wasn't looking at the check boxes. I apologize. Next up, Tom Corcoran.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tom Corcoran. My address is 5464 Windy Drive, Stevens Point. I'm the program director for Heartland Leadership. We're a leadership nonprofit organization with the Portage County Business Council Foundation. I'm not here representing their organization, but as I use the space at Create. So we have 5 to 6 leadership groups meeting throughout the year, and a number of them meet at the Create space in the different offerings that they have for meeting spaces. It's been a wonderful opportunity to bring diversity of people in our community that are here to grow in leadership coming into that space. They get exposed to other leaders and other people that are creative and initiatives, and it's been wonderful to work with that space. I've also had the opportunity to work with Greg, and we put a podcast studio in the space. And I've had the opportunity to work with a number of people with aspirations of starting their businesses and getting their message out through podcasts, and that's been very exciting to see. So I encourage you to vote yes in this for the Create Fox project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jim Radford. By the way, we've had a few seats open up here in the main room, so if there's anyone in the overflow room, we probably could fit another 5. I didn't count, but I think it's about 5.
Thank you. My name is Jim Radford, 404 Virginia Drive, Stevens Point. I'm here tonight wearing two hats, you might say. I was the consultant. My firm was retained by the Board of Directors of Create Portage County back in November of last year to do a feasibility study to see if it was possible to raise $6.5 million to restore the Fox Theater. We went out to interview 35 people. That was our contract. My firm has done many feasibility studies as a prelude to a campaign throughout the Midwest, many places. Well, it was pretty obvious as we got into the study that the idea of renovating the Fox as a theater just was not going to fly. The price tag was $6 million. People thought it was just not warranted at that price, and the sustaining potential of a theater was just discouraging. And the Fox board on Maine had studied the situation. The Create board had studied the situation. So about halfway through the study, we decided that we have to really find a more creative solution to the situation because, in point of fact, a lot of people are emotionally connected to the Fox, love the history that it represents, and we're very sad to realize that it might go away altogether. So we extended the interview pool to over 80 people at no additional charge, I might add. We got a lot of input about the Fox and the idea of a new approach to doing something about that. And it became very apparent that it was never really about saving the Fox. It was about an idea center and a new thing coming to Stevens Point and Portage County that's a little bit different, but it's really, really wonderful. And the impact that it can have will last for many, many years. So the idea of a facade restoration emerged. And now, believe it or not, there's actually a term called facadism. I just learned that. But it's a growing trend around the country. And people are looking here to Stevens Point to see this as a potential model for their community in small town America. And I think it's really great. I've lived here 30 years. We moved here from New Jersey. I worked in Manhattan. We moved here to raise our 5 kids with our 6 cousins, and we've never regretted a moment of it. Quality of life is a big deal around here, and the Fox Theater is important to a lot of people. So combining an innovative future with the facility, I think is going to be a great thing. A lot of the business people that I interviewed were very concerned about retaining and attracting quality people. We don't want our graduates from SPASH or Pacelli or the university or the tech center to go away. We like them to stay here and raise their families and grow. And so the Idea Center, I think, has a lot of potential. A new Fox is about a community center that will be available to people for many, many different purposes and reasons. I could even have my retirement party there someday. Okay. So I would urge you to think about retaining the proposal and passing it, hopefully with vigor, because really you're looking at a potential for a future that is a shining example of the leadership that this area is known for. It attracted me and my family here 30 years ago. I think you'll find it's an investment that will return many, many dollars over the years. And I was hearing the budget complaints at the last meeting I was at, the Finance Committee meeting. And one of the things you need to realize is this is an economic development project that will bring in not only reputation and pride, but also revenue dollars. The Convention Bureau calls that heads and beds, I think. People coming here for seminars and for meetings of all different kinds. So I think you will find this a project that will have many returns on the investment that you will make, hopefully with your dollars and also with your enthusiasm. One of the phrases I heard at the Finance Committee meeting was, we need to see skin in the game by others. Well, we're over $1 million so far, from what I understand, and some of our earliest gifts came from the corporations that Jim Featherston was just talking about a minute ago. We haven't really even gone out to the broader community, and so I think what you'll see is a lot of skin in the game once we get going, but people will look with admiration and with hope to the city for its leadership. Thank you. Appreciate your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you, Jim. Steph and Chris are doing just fine, and they're anxious to get home. Next up, Sarah Jo Moore.
Hi, Sarah Jo Moore, 1024 Buchholz Avenue. I brought cookies. They're in the overflow room if anybody's interested. Create Portage County has provided numerous events that are at the top of my list when it comes to things to do in Stevens Point. Not only do I enjoy these events personally, but it has given my business, the Main Grain Bakery, much exposure. Our side gig Toast was developed when Create gave us the opportunity to be a food vendor at the Levitt Amp concerts. Without that, we wouldn't have had the following that we do, now leading to other catering opportunities for weddings and corporate events. For that, I'm grateful. Perhaps if the Idea Center was around when I opened the bakery in 2011, it would have been an ideal space to meet, develop a business plan with the support of other entrepreneurs and creatives. The small apartment on Franklin Street worked out just fine, but what else could have been developed with more like-minded individuals in a vibrant space downtown Stevens Point? As we move forward with the next phase of the Main Grain Bakery, I have the Idea Center to thank as we meet there every other week. With this meeting space, a group of local food businesses were able to plan and create a cooperative to move us in the direction of all working together under one roof in the future. Additionally, I've listened to the podcasts that have been created from the Idea Center. I've been a guest on one of the podcasts that has been formed in this space. I can't imagine what else will come from a new Fox on Main Street. I'm invested in this community and Create Portage County. I can visualize a vibrant space downtown, allowing young professionals like myself to gather, create, and make Stevens Point a place that more people will want to seek out. We are here to build this community up. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Michael Moore, 1-0.
Michael Moore, 1024 Buckolt Avenue. My wife brought cookies. I'm here to support the plan for a new Fox as an entrepreneur and a UWSP alumni. A few years back, I came upon an idea to turn an observation of a phenomenon into a device that could help people and that I could build a business model around. In passing, I mentioned this idea to Greg Wright, and without hesitation, he said, "You need to do this." And then he said, "What does it take to do this, and how can Create help?" With the help of 3D printers and other resources at the Idea Center, I've been able to develop prototypes for testing and participate in local entrepreneurial contests, all while being in a space where my idea feels nurtured and respected. Due to the progress I made at the Idea Center, along with the Hatch events and the support network around them, earlier this year I received a Stage 1 UW Idea Advance grant to continue developing my idea. I couldn't be more excited for the future that this project holds, and although I know someday I will move beyond the Idea Center, I will forever be grateful for the effort and care given to me by the team at Create. On a separate note, I'd like to share a perspective. I graduated from UWSP in 2010, and as I think it is with many students, you don't always pay close attention to the community where you attend college. The opportunities for creative professionals were slim, and I remember thinking about what cities I could move to, both large and small, that embraced a certain energy that I was looking for. It's an energy that can be seen when creative solutions are embraced and cultural conversations are the norm rather than the exception. I can tell you that I've started to feel this energy within our community. And although it is not from one particular person or organization, I know that Create Portage County is the backbone of this new energy. I really did not plan to stay around Stevens Point, and had it not been for my girlfriend at the time wanting to start the Main Grain Bakery at the callow age of 21, I probably wouldn't be here today. I think about myself upon graduation, and I can say with confidence that the new Fox has been established. Had the new Fox been established at that time, with its ability to nurture creative professionals, I would not have been so eager to leave. The team at Create has gained my trust and confidence through their actions, and it's this team that has the ability to make a new Fox a meaningful and impactful place for this community. Please support a new Fox and the possibilities that this new energy brings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Vincent Moresi.
Vinnie Moresi, 1008 6th Avenue, Stevens Point, Wisconsin, Portage County District 1 Supervisor. And I wanted to thank President Johnson for reading my my spiel to finance last month. So this will, or last week. So this will be a bit of a repeat for some of you, but I thought I would read it because I write how I speak. So I can't imagine how it came out of President Johnson's mouth, trying to interpret my gibberish. And my neighbor brought cookies, if you want. They're in the other room over there.
Somebody better go get the cookies.
So the power of good ideas is what will propel Stevens Point and Portage County through the 21st century. The power of good ideas will keep Central Wisconsin relevant in our great state. The power of good ideas will make Stevens Point and Portage County an economic, entrepreneurial, cultural, creative innovation hub for our region and beyond. If we take the steps to ensure their existence and proliferation throughout our community. Create Portage County and the Idea Center has made ideas central to their mission, especially good ones. Create Portage County is full of good people from diverse backgrounds, skill sets, and many of which are young, vibrant, highly skilled professionals who will set roots, reinvest in our community, and call Central Wisconsin home. It'll take bold leadership and forward-thinking policymakers willing to take these exciting risks in the name of progress for our city and county. It'll take foresight and trust in the creative process and the next generation of business leaders and cultural creatives like myself. I think I'm one of those people. It will take fortitude to analyze the data that confirms innovation centers like Create Portage County and the Idea Center have a profound impact on the economic viability, livability, and evolvability of our cities and towns. And it'll take plenty of hard work and sweat equity to transform Fox Theater into the next phase of community space, entrepreneurial training center, innovation hub, and the nucleus of arts and culture in Central Wisconsin. But what it really takes is for us to collaborate. We need to collaborate between civic groups, nonprofit, business leaders, and the city, and this city council support to make this vision come to fruition. With your support here tonight, the greater community will know that a new Fox and its vision for a resilient Stevens Point and Portage County is a priority and investment in our future and my kids' future. I'm really proud to see my district very well represented here, District 1, which is the heart of Stevens Point. And if you kind of geographically place the Idea Center and the Fox Theater, it really is like the absolute heart of the city. It's symbolic, but it's also something that I think will bring people here and keep them here. And I think that's the most important thing that we have going for us in our community, is that we have something that is letting us thrive. So thank you. Please support it. And I hope you just amend the amendment to include that full 500,000. That would be really wonderful as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Moresi. And since everybody else was doing it, I guess that makes District 1 the We Brought Cookies district. Next up, we have Bill Sherrill.
Good evening. Bill Sherrill, representing 1665 Main Street, but I'm also board president of Create Portage County. There's been a lot of wonderful things said. I just want to touch on one aspect. It's really the past strategic context of this project, that it was several years ago that in the two letters that were submitted, one on Ellis Stone letterhead was former Mayor Andrew Halverson talking about where this project started and why it was started. It was also the Dave Ekman letter from the former economic development at UWSP. All of those people got together, and that was the conversation was around that the community needed a place for innovation, support for entrepreneurship in order to grow businesses and create a vibrancy for attraction and retention. And I guess I don't really want that to be forgotten, that we get lost a lot of times, but this goes back a long way, and that Create was charged with at that point as a pilot. I feel like in the last 2.5 years, the space has proven the fact that it has been successful by all the stories. That is what we cannot forget about, is the fact that this is an investment in something that was talked about in a lot of people do faces, but it has a history here, and we need to continue that history, and that pilot has been successful, and to invest in that pilot going forward. The other thing I'd like to touch on that I know that came up in finance was that through the developers agreement, the $150,000 security for the donation financial commitment has been secured and will be secured through the developers agreement. That was a concern, and I think that that's just an important thing to point out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have registering in favor of, but not wishing to speak, is our Portage County Historical Society President, Tim Siebert. District Attorney Louis Malevsky Jr. says, registered in favor but not speaking, or speaking in favor if there's time. Mr. Malevsky, we always have time for citizens to speak, so much so that we made it an ordinance. I would invite you to the lectern.
Louis Malevsky, 1101 Ridge Road. I'm here as a citizen, but in a little hat with, or small hat with the DA job. But first, as a citizen, this Common Council has already authorized $25,000 for the study, a multi-phase study. I see this as just phase one of that study, with a private entity coming forward and taking the charge to the taxpayers and saying, we have a plan, we can move forward, and we're going to use something and do something with a space that, but for this group, you'll have a vacant space in the downtown. I was last in the building in 1984. I watched Gremlins, and that's the last time I was there. And no one else has stood up, including the Andre family, and thank you to them for actually donating the property. But I mean, think about that. No one else has come forward, and that's why city tax dollars are appropriate for this use. The second hat is, if you do not invest in the downtown as a destination, the private development will not come as much as you probably want. Speaking to Alderman Slawinski, my friend, Alderman Phillips, I listened to your comments on taxes. Right on, I agree with you, but think about this. If you do not put money in on old buildings where it's so depreciated that the private development won't come without some incentive, who else will incentivize it? It's like the north side of the city of Stevens Point. You see houses, someone takes care of one house, and it keeps going, right? And that builds tax base. If you do not invest in downtown, who else will? And that's how I see it. We put a lot of money in the apartments on Lullaby and Belkey properties, and this is a drop in the bucket. And finally, if you watch downtown at night, there are some levels of crime that are starting to incrementally go up. Lighting or people using drugs in the library area. We cannot have a part of our downtown become just a dragged bad area where it's just vacant and torn down and dilapidated. That will be creep then for all the other private owners to vacate their property and go somewhere else. And I ask you to support it.
Thank you. Matt Vollmer. I think Matt might be in the other room.
Eating cookies.
Eating cookies.
All those cookies.
Hi, Matt Vollmer, 68666 6th Street, Stevens Point, Wisconsin, 54482. Wish I was part of the cookie crew. Didn't have a cookie yet. Definitely am going to after, because Mangrade is awesome. So just getting on that train. But anyway, first I wanted to thank all of you for working in government and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. There's always financial constraints, and you've got a tight budget, and you have tough decisions to make, and I appreciate that hard work. You might not get thanked as often as maybe you should. I'm a UWSP alumnus. I've lived in this community for 15 years. My kids go to school here. We've owned several homes and rental properties, and I can attest to this being an amazing community to live in and raise a family in. The Fox has been vacant the entire time I've lived here. I've kind of followed the story a little bit, and I've always thought it's such an underutilized space. Why can't we get this put together for the purpose of economic development and tourism? I really believe the crux of this issue includes a couple of factors: economic development, resident retention, and tourism, like you've heard already. I can share some examples for you regarding economic development and talent retention. On the tourism front, I think it's fair to say that historic downtown is a draw for tourism, especially an appeal for students and much more. Why do we travel? Why do we go to historic places, right? Stevens Point's not Rome, but why do you go to Rome? Because the history is protected and there's integrity of the history. If we don't do that here, why are people going to come here? I think it's a pretty black and white example. But the history and preservation of that, that's purposeful in utilizing that in some fashion, keeping the facade, things like that. Part of the history and tourism. But more importantly, I think it's more about economic development and talent resident retention. And I thought I could share my company's story as a simple example. The most difficult part of living the American dream is really bridging the gap between employment and generating sustainable revenue in a new business. There are very few resources out there to help someone go from idea to a successful company. The Idea Center and Create Portage County are a great way to do that. So I'm going to throw you some stats here. I have 1 minute left. Was that too? Wow, sure. Fast.
Take the time you need.
But we were introduced to Greg at the Idea Center. Greg introduced my company, Arbrake Technologies. We do business from Washington to Texas to Toronto, Canada. And we were winners of a Hatch Business Pitch Contest. We won $5,000. We were then introduced to Brightstar, Wisconsin. And in June, we secured investment of $600,000. We've raised $655,000 total. Our company is headquartered here in Stevens Point. And so as of December of last year, we had 0 employees. As of June of this year, we have 5 full-time employees, 2 of which are UWSP alum and are both 6-figure per year jobs. So we've created 2 local jobs. Now, just if you do some basic math on that, that's, imagine that's one company, right? Now imagine if there was 15 companies like that working in this space. If they're all the same as Arbrake Technologies, that's $3.3 million going back into the community on a $250,000 investment. So I think you can see the economic return there is fairly straightforward. I'm also spending, or my company is spending $20,000 with another Create business over the next 12 months. That's only one company, and I'm sure there'll be more. So it's dollars being invested back into jobs, it's dollars being invested back into other local businesses, and it doesn't take much for a couple of good companies to get in there and have a really good return on economic development. I'm over on time, so I'm just going to kind of cut to the chase here, but one final statistic I want to leave with you on makerspaces. There's an estimated 135 million makers in the United States. That's 41% of the entire population. If you want to attract 41% of the entire United States population, you have to have a space like this. It's pretty straightforward. I used to drive to Milwaukee to go to Ward 4, which is a similar makerspace. I went there 2 days a week. I drove from Stevens Point. That's a 2.5-hour drive. If I had to do that for another year, I probably wouldn't be here. I probably would have moved. So it's just another really example. But again, in terms of attracting and retaining community members, maintaining historic integrity of Stevens Point, it's a win-win-win from my vantage point. And for that kind of return, I don't really think we should be talking about a tax increase to fund this project, as other has said. We're talking about, taking a real hard look at capital expenditures that possibly have no return for the community, and I encourage you to support this project that does add value and has a return for taxpayers, both quantitatively and qualitatively. So I encourage you to support this project and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to take 30 seconds as citizen Mike Wiesa to share just a few comments. Create Portage County and the Idea Center is one of the best things that's happened to this community in recent history. My wife and I fully support the project. We did put some of our skin in the game. I know that was brought up. It's a small piece of skin, but it's still skin. And I think this is probably the best idea that anyone's had for the Fox Theater in a generation. I want to see us as a community breathe new life into that rather than having to destroy something like that. This idea has the potential to work. And ironically, we wouldn't even have this idea if it weren't for the Idea Center. The current location of the Idea Center was only meant to be a temporary location. The county purchased that with their plan to build a new facility downtown and incorporate that into it. The Idea Center got to use that as a lease, and their commitment to that as an interim thing until the county decided to need it. I don't want to do anything that puts Create and the Idea Center at risk. So I hope you and support this proposal. As Mayor Mike Wiesa, I share Citizen Wiesa's opinions and think that we have put together a developer's agreement between the city attorney, comptroller, treasurer, the rest of the city staff, DJ Schneider in the inspection department and community development, that meets our requirements to protect the interest of taxpayer dollars. It also provides a catalyst, hopefully, to see the new Fox vision come to life. So I would encourage you to support the developer's agreement as proposed. Alder Nabel?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Weiser? Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll get to the chief later.
I just thought I needed to make a few statements from speaking for some of the constituents that I've spoken to in my District 3, which I also believe is the heart of Stevens Point. It's right around.
What do you got for cookies?
And feel that it's been neglected a lot, and I know I say it and often again, but again, we've been hearing lately with the cuts, this $250,000 that we would be putting out from our budget, that we're already cutting our budget is at, what, 11-something, and our wants are at 11-something, and we can only go at 5 point something. So we're already in a dilemma. Already heard complaints at the finance meeting about $60,000 going to Emerson Park, which is the only middle of the city green space we have, which is very important to have people behind, which that $60,000 is nothing in comparison and has been waiting for a long time, many, many years. So I'm very concerned. The people in my constituency have said their property values, they've been paying more taxes that went up with, new taxes going up for schools. They're concerned about having taxes go up again if it was for this. I would not be for this if it was to be that it was on the backs of the taxpayers by any means. I would hope that we have money up front from other people first for us to go with this. I'd love to see this go through. I'm total agreement of everything everybody said about CREATE, the importance of it, and how much our city needs this. It is the booster we need to make our downtown be viable and our city viable. So I am for this, but I'm really concerned with the dollar amount. The finance is important, but we also have other areas that are in dire need. And constituents that don't make much money that are looking at this and saying, I live in town and I make $40-some thousand. This is going to hurt them if it goes on taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Finn. No, you can go to the lectern up front here. I thought you were trying to get out and get some cookies.
That's later.
Bob Finn, Fire Chief. I just want to reiterate what I said at committees. I've listened to everyone talk tonight, and I don't disagree with what anybody said tonight. But as a department head, the mayor, the city council, you have asked department heads to come up with plans on pay. We have to cut our own budgets to add staff. And I know this is a separate budget, but it's all collaborative effort here. We have to cut our purse strings just to maintain and produce a little bit more for the citizens of Stevens Point. Excuse me. As I said at the committees, the Fox Theater's been vacant since 1985. The raise order was issued by the building department 3 or 4 months ago, and then all of a sudden it became a viable issue. Since I've been chief, which is 4 years, we've had a general order that the building's on fire. We're not going in. It's that unsafe. I'm not going to put any firemen in danger. And then I listen about money from TIF districts. As I understand through meetings with department heads, that TIF district doesn't have any money. You're going to borrow from another TIF district, and you're taking TIF district dollars and giving it to a non-taxing entity. It's a tax-free, so you're not collecting anything from that. And I heard more and more tonight about that extra $250,000. Well, you know where that $250,000 is going to come out of? The 2021 capital expenditure. When they come and say we're $250,000 short, what's the city council going to do? Every department head here has put stuff in the capital it's been, I don't want to say cut, but not appropriate it because the city can't afford it. We all understand it. So I urge you, I agree with everything they said. Let private money build this. This isn't meant for taxpayer dollars because it will have an impact on the capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Comptroller, I know you sent out an email. Did you want to highlight any of those things just in case the alderpersons didn't read it in regards to the developers agreement?
Sure, yeah. So just a couple of modifications that were made to the developers agreement, and I apologize, usually we wouldn't have an update the day of, but of course getting it all together in a week was a big lift for city staff. We did go through it with a fine-tooth comb today, and just a couple of updates. We did update the language as far as the security for city costs, just to make it a little bit more clear clear as far as what we were looking for there, and also to identify some of the options. I know that they've already said that they would probably go with somebody making a personal guarantee, but still wanted to sort of leave all the options on the table just in case that changes. And that is language that I feel comfortable with that does protect the city, at least on that first $150,000 of the city investment. And then the only other big clarification was just clarifying at what point that guarantee or that collateral securing that city investment could be released. And that would be 75% of completion of the phase 2 of the project. So that would be, pretty close to complete as far as when we could release that, and then also added the standards as far as, okay, what does that mean as far as 75% completion? I would note that that is a standard that we've used in other development agreements and used the same language from those, so trying to be consistent from one development agreement to another. And then just another sort of technical change is I know that the draft included reference to TIF District 10, because, obviously there were some copying and pasting from other development agreements. This is actually in TIF District 6, so did make that update as well. I know that sometimes that gets confusing, that TIF 10 is also very close to 6 with the overlay, but the Fox Theater actually is not in TIF District 10, it is in TIF District 6, so just wanted to make that clear. And then certainly if anyone has any questions on the language changes, I'm happy to take those. And then just to kind of make a follow-up on Chief Finn's statement as well, certainly this is a conversation that we've had internally, and I guess I do agree that it's important that we find a way to do this without negatively impacting the departments, and that's why even though the request was for $500,000, what's being brought before you is to fund it at the $250,000 level, because that's the money that we would have available in TIF that would not need to come out of capital. So that is the reason for that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know that the request is for $500,000. It's going to be tough to do that, just being realistic, and also, as much as we hate to cut requests in half, that is what we had to do with the rest of the city departments this year as far as having $11 million in requests for $5.8 million in capital. And then the only other thing that I just want to note as well is I know some of the department heads have already asked me, if the operating costs of operating this building go up, are we going to have to increase the operating subsidy that we currently give to Create? And is that going to affect our operating budgets? And I guess just to address that one, maybe before it comes up, I think that would be very difficult for the city to do. So, just as far as my perspective on that would be that it would be difficult, especially as tight as operating budgets are, to increase that subsidy that we currently have, just given what we're trying to do with both addressing some staff issues and addressing some wage issues.
Thank you, Comptroller. And just to kind of reiterate the point, I know that there was a $500,000 request, but the developers agreement that's before us goes with the staff recommendation of $250,000. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. City Attorney Beveridge, anything we'd like to add regarding the developers agreement?
Just that earlier you mentioned myself, DJ, and Corey as having worked on this, but I want to point out that it was actually Kyle Kearns who dropped everything he was doing and drafted the entire thing in one day last Tuesday.
I apologize. I wasn't here, so I apologize for that, Kyle, and thank you very much for taking all of the effort that needed to be done to put into this developers agreement.
You're welcome.
DJ Schneider, our interim community development director and building your inspection superintendent, did you have anything you wanted to add or touch on any of the points regarding the city's concerns regarding the things that need to be outlined in the timeline and the things that need to be done?
To address the mayor's comments, I agree with everything I heard here tonight also. Create great things. Nobody can deny that. But you're also hearing the other side of things that everybody has to deal with. I think I've talked to quite a few of you one-on-one about this issue. So is there any questions, I guess, from development side or inspection side that I could answer for any of you at this point?
Alder Dugan?
When I talked with you about this and other things, because I'm a great fan.
Kathy, I'm sorry, Alderperson Dugan, could you lean into the microphone a little bit? I know you're kind of, you have a soft voice.
Yeah.
They're just not able to hear you through the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
If you lean into the microphone just a little bit.
I am. Okay.
That should be good.
When we talked about this instance, you talked about the decades of neglect and the fact, actually, that there were other communities around the state who were well aware of the lack of inspection and in our city for some time. And I just wondered if you wanted to mention that, or should we not say anything more about it?
I don't think it's relative to the action that needs to be taken tonight, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for the director? I know we may have some questions, and we'll refer to any of the directors or any staff that is available, including the director over at Create. We can get those questions answered as you have them. Any questions for Interim Director Schneider? Mr. Phillips.
When does the raise order take effect?
October 18th. What we have talked about this past week, we've had more than several meetings regarding this matter. And one thing that I have conceded is if this does go through and because of the timing, I would be willing to, assuming they, as in Creator Fox on Main, however you want to look at it now, has a signed contract with a contractor to do the demolition. I'd be willing to put that date out within reason. It's not going to be, middle of winter type of within reason, but the 18th might be a little tough, short notice. If they can get something done November, I'd be willing to work with them there because I look at it as if they don't meet the 18th, either way I have to do something, so we're still probably not getting anything actually done until the middle of November. But they would have to have, like I say, a signed contract at that point for me to consider that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you, Director. We may call upon you later. Kyle, I can't apologize enough for that oversight. Would you like to come to the lectern and talk about anything that you've worked on over the past week? Your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to comment generally just in regards to Create and my past. I've had the unique experience to work with the city of Stevens Point in one capacity or another for the last almost 8 years. First as the city's economic development specialist, more recently as a city planner and zoning administrator now. And I can certainly attest to Mr. Sherrill's earlier comment in regards to the city's initiative to further entrepreneurial activity in the city. That's one thing that the city and an initiative that both myself and Michael Ostrowski have worked towards as it's worked in other communities quite well, one being Wausau. And it's a huge benefit to have the Idea Center in the city of Stevens Point because of a lot of what you've heard tonight. And that's something that as economic development personnel is very valuable to the community and is something that I think we may take for granted. And I think it's very beneficial that I think a lot of the elders now know a lot more about the Idea Center and the impact that it has within the community. The other thing I want to note is, the future of downtown, right? Downtown has changed significantly. I've been in the city of Stevens Point for 15 years. I came here as a university student and saw it when it was not so good. I've had the opportunity to play a direct role in the community and the downtown especially, and the changes that have been made in downtown. And it's very rewarding to have a front row seat to that change. And with a lot of the upcoming development projects, that change is going to continue, and it's going to continue for the better. With the injection of upwards of 300 additional housing units within downtown, having the Idea Center downtown, having an entrepreneurial educational center downtown is going to benefit the community hugely because of that additional populace that's going to be in downtown and is going to be engaging in these different activities and the events at Piffner Pioneer Park and all the other activities that Create Portage County certainly has a hand in. So again, it's not only the indirect benefits, but I think having it on Main Street is going to improve some of those direct benefits in how just having that staple on Main Street plays into those activities and those people in the downtown. The last thing I want to touch on, which is a little bit overlooked and which I outlined within the Historic Preservation Staff Report from a few weeks ago, is preserving that historic character. When many people think of the downtown, they think of that building. Why do they think of that building? Because it's one of the unique buildings from an architectural standpoint within the downtown. Now, unfortunately, the historic relevance with that building is more so geared toward the architect that designed the facility. Nonetheless, I think in preserving that historic character in the downtown, again, is very beneficial, and Create's project will also do that, preserve that historic character and rehab that building. That's all I have for closing remarks, and I'd be certainly answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Alderperson Nabel.
Thank you. Director, I guess that's right, correct? No.
No.
I still want to call you that anyway. But anyway, do you think this might be a plus towards getting Shopko developed then, having Create? Would that be maybe a good way to look at that? That might be a way to offset thinking this might be a nonprofit building that we're going to have here, but maybe this will get Shopko to get something in there, so there would be some more revenue that direction.
I certainly think it plays a role, and there's some of the citizens here tonight mentioned that having vacant buildings in your downtown does not help your downtown flourish. And over the last decade, we've seen a lot of those vacancies change over to uses. We've seen a lot of second floors be converted into apartments or additional uses, and so the activity in downtown has grown, and I would foresee that being able to fill vacant space in your downtown is going to be the catalyst that drives additional development. So not only for the Shopko lot, but for the 30,000 square feet of retail space that we're going to find on the Lullaby site is certainly going to play into the existing activity in downtown, the existing businesses in downtown. As again, some of the citizens mentioned earlier, a lot of businesses, they play off one another. And if you've got a successful business in downtown that's doing business with another successful business, there's benefits to being able to, reside next to one another, I think.
That's some of the complaints I've been hearing from my constituents, is that now we've lost Kmart, Shopko, those that for infill that we're talking about, so people don't have to drive and that we don't need to have as many cars. Now they're saying, well, now I have to have a car because I have to drive out to, Walmart or wherever to get what I need. And so it's been a tough thing to see how we're trying to do all this infill and all of a sudden we're losing the stores that they need.
Yeah, downtown is in a very unique situation in that the failure of the mall really was due to the growth at the interstate and the retail at the interstate. Unfortunately, the growth at the interstate and the retail at the interstate is now hurting because of the Amazons of the world. So I think, it's putting our downtown in a unique situation where we can step up, right? We can step up and encourage that growth in downtown via other means, and I think what Create does is a way to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Alderperson Morrow.
Since if this does pass, we're going to have to borrow the $250,000 from TIF 10. How much is left in that TIF?
Again, it would be TIF 6 and TIF 5. The Division Street TIF is a donor to TIF 6. I'll let Corey answer the question specifically in regards to the increment available.
Let's hold that question. I'll have Comptroller Treasurer ask it. Does anybody else have any questions for Kyle? Alder Phillips.
How many empty buildings do we have downtown right now? How many empty storefronts?
I don't know exact number, but I would say about 3 or 4. One of them's operating in conjunction with another facility, so it appears vacant, but it's not technically. But I think there's probably 3 or 4.
So it's minimal.
Very much so, yes. Compared to in 2008 having 15.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Comptroller, do you want to answer?
Sure. So
Morris question.
Yep. Okay. So as far as how much would be left in TIF 5, not a whole lot. There are still some remaining expenses in TIF 5 as well that we may have to pay before the end of the year related to the roundabout and roundabout art. So after we pay, this 250, and then any final expenses that we have related to that, I'm not going to say it would be zero, but you wouldn't have a large balance there in TIF 5, at least for the close of this year. Now, of course, you could generate increment in future years, so I don't want to say, it's not like that TIF district will be over and you can never do anything again, but it will be just more or less depleted at the end of the year, within reason. I mean, there'd be some money left, but not a huge amount.
Okay, thank you. Director Lemke, you had your hand up. You want to speak?
Yeah, I didn't get to stay through the whole thing last Monday, so I don't know how any of the comments got carried on with infrastructure. And I mentioned infrastructure.
Not sure those microphones are on.
Really early. I think it's got a light.
Does it?
Yeah.
We're not hearing you, so
do you want me to move?
Up in the back. There you go.
Okay, there we go. So I just wanted to talk about that a little. It's really something to see this many people come around an issue like that, and that's great. But I want to talk about the infrastructure stuff that's been talked about down there too, because one of the expenses that is very, I think everybody understands is TIF eligible from a city perspective. And again, stuff that nobody else is going to pay for except for the city through one of their financing mechanisms, whether that be general fund, borrowing, or TIF, are all these infrastructure projects. And now we did a study through the Community Development Office back in 08 or 09 through PDI. There's a recent revisioning that's been done also. All of those things involve a lot of infrastructure to do exactly what they're talking about we should be doing, and that's investing in downtown. So there's a very public side of those efforts that's going to be very expensive if things get carried out. And just scribbling here in the last couple minutes, there's a few things that have been highlighted over the years, that the most likely of them. There's been a lot of talk about the redesign, or at least the repaving of Centerpoint, because of the age of that pavement and the fact that maybe that layout is a little antiquated. There's been recent talk about daylighting of Moses Creek. That's a very expensive project if it comes to fruition, very expensive. North side flooding mitigation, while that's largely a stormwater thing, that would go in concert with some of the Moses Creek efforts potentially, and that could add a pretty big bill. Changing the one-way pairs to two-way, that's a streets thing, but that would obviously involve infrastructure in the way of lights and things where they're already signalized and they would be different in the future, signage, stuff like that. Connection of the square and Main Street to the riverfront is one that was a hot topic years back, and through some of this revisioning thing, especially with a water feature out there, obviously has infrastructure costs associated with it. And again, it's not something that anybody's going to pony up the dollars for except for this group. You're going to have to come up with the dollars for all of this. And that's largely a pedestrian accommodation effort. So just want to point out there, and I think my main point last week was to say, make the decision with the facts in mind that it's very much at some point a this or that, and it always is, right? It always is with capital. We cut that in half this year, right? And everything else, it is a this or that. The one big difference that I really see here is that there isn't another player at the table to pay for infrastructure improvements. It's right here. So that's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Comptroller, correct me if I'm wrong, at least some of that was incorporated into TID 10 with the planning, so the Centerpoint potential redevelopment, the daylighting of Moses Creek, those areas are in the new created TID 10, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at the map, but basically TIF 10 kind of does a donut hole around the core downtown Main Street area. So, I don't know exactly where all of these infrastructure projects will go, but at least some of them would be in TIF District 10. I would say the big one that would probably be in TIF 5 would be some kind of north side redevelopment. So, and it is one of those things where, unfortunately, we don't really have a pot of money that we can tap into that isn't going to affect anything else down the line. So, I think it's just a matter of keeping all that in mind and balancing the priorities.
Thank you. Alder Dugan.
Yeah, I have a couple of remarks here. I guess it's an argument as well, a little different one. I took a look at all the remarks at the Finance Committee meeting. I couldn't be there. And first of all, I was asking myself, what is CREATE? And when CREATE first began, and I met Greg Wright, I was a little skeptical. I didn't know what they were going to do. But after tonight, and after a lot of things actually in the last few years, I understand CREATE is a business incubator. And what is the Fox? Now, these are quotes from people who spoke last week. A symbol of cultural significance, and I really agree with that. It's an awesome building. It's a historic gem and a crucial piece of our historic downtown, and I think several people have made good arguments for that. But the Fox has been a blight on the downtown for a long time. We can't just forget that. That's history, and of course, that's one of the reasons that we're going forward, I hope. And the highest and best use of the space is for the extension of the Idea Center and CREATE Portage County. Now, this is, I think, a quote from the president and CEO of Rosella, who's spoken tonight, too. As he says, if the city stands behind this, then the business community will rally and that $3.5 million will flow. But the city has to go first. I know a lot of people who spoke tonight, some of whom know a lot of people with money. And I believe that the money will flow once we get behind it. I believe in the city going first, too. From a different perspective, as I mentioned, I think we have a responsibility to atone for our past sins, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. Regarding the Fox Theater, first, we condemned and demolished the Fox Theater's north section, making the movie theater unable to function. Then the family owning the building closed the Fox and left it to deteriorate for 30 years, and the city should have stepped in then. I can understand the family's grief. Maybe that's a different argument. But they neglected it, and the city did not step in. In those decades, if the city had been exercising its authority to inspect buildings that were in decay and require compliance when violations were discovered, and there were plenty of them, the Fox would not be in the condition it is today.
Okay.
The city of Stevens Point condemned and tore down a portion of the Fox, creating a non-functioning movie theater, the city's inspection department, the Fox building for 30 years, helping to create an eyesore, a blight, et cetera, et cetera. These are the two main points I have, and I have several others that are kind of mixed up here. But I think we have a responsibility. I think we have a real responsibility to find some money to fund this project. That is a partial demolition and saving the facade. I support using TIF money, and I support a solid development agreement. With those two things, I think we should go forward for the reasons I said. I mean, we owe downtown, we owe city, the Fox Theater, some help.
Thank you, Alderperson. President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to everybody who's been here both at the Finance Committee meeting and tonight, and all of the emails. And I particularly want to thank staff because my motion the other night, which was approved for the $250,000, left staff trying to put together my intentions. So thank you very much. I had a very nice telephone call with the attorney, the comptroller, treasurer, and our interim director on what my intentions were, and so they did marvelously. And thank you for your hard work. I know what it's like to be staff and then have someone throw something else at you to get done right away. So I appreciate their work on this. Saying that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the developers agreement as presented with the additional information from the comptroller treasurer. I do have some comments after that.
Thank you. We have a second by Alderperson Dugan. There were several hands up, but that was the first one I saw. President Johnson, back to you.
Thank you. It's been long, so I'll try to be brief. I just want to remind people, so the borrowing from TIF 5, that $250,000, if the council, and I won't get into too much details because this was talked about in closed session, but we talked about a project on the Division Street corridor, and there was a request for a similar amount of money that will be going towards this, and luckily that developer doesn't need that money now. So we've talked about projects, and we probably would have been very willing to go ahead with that project. I just want to think about this for a second. Imagine this. So Create Portage County is here. They're kind of a captive audience for us. But if developer XYZ, investment firm XYZ comes in and says, we'd really like to move into Stevens Point to build an entrepreneurial center, a business incubator, and a small business development center, but we need some support from the city of Stevens Point in the form of TIF funding, we'd be going, okay. Because we can go somewhere else and we'll go to Plover, let's say, or Amherst, which is really, we got a very robust economic development thing going on out there. We would have said, how can we keep this business? How can we keep them here in Stevens Point? We would have sparked up and probably tried to figure out how to address the needs of developer XYZ, because they have this great idea for creating jobs in this community, for retaining young professionals in this community, for allowing businesses to start the very first thought and grow into, that guy's paying 6 figures. I need to find a job. So I think we've got this idea that there's this captive audience, so therefore we just shouldn't, maybe toss the money at it. This is a developer with an idea. They've already got pledges and some other money. They've built a business model that they intend to employ at this new innovation center that will cover their annual costs. I think we would have paid very, very close attention to this had it been an outside developer. It's our own folks. It's our neighbors, the people who have been next to us all along. So I think it's important to support that. And as for the timing, yes, this has sat there for 30 years. And why now? We've got the raise order. Sometimes there's just a catalyst. Last March, I was walking down Madison and I caught my image in the window and I went, I need to lose weight. And lo and behold, 22 pounds less later, that was my catalyst. The catalyst was the raise order, and it sparked action.
Yes.
And that's why I support this. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. You heard there's cookies in the other room, right?
I did. I had a granola bar and some grapes for my suppers.
All right, I had lunch.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion to approve. It's been seconded. Are there any other comments? Alderperson Kneebone.
I'm really conflicted about this. Citizen Mary Kneebone thinks this is a great idea. Alderperson Mary Kneebone has a petition from 27 of her constituents to fix their alley. I'm going to be in a great deal of hot water with my constituents if I support this, but I support everything that they do. there's so many needs in the city. What projects would we not do in the other TIF district if we take money from this one? You know, from, what is it, 5 to put in 6? You know, how are we going to get the alleys fixed? I've got people going to the city for gravel and filling their old potholes in their alleys. I'd hoped we could talk about it on the Public Works agenda this month, but it didn't quite make it. So I spoke against this at the Finance Committee meeting at the behest of all the constituents I've heard of, except for Mr. Corcoran, who I discovered tonight I think is one of my constituents. He's the only one I've heard other than Katrina Shankland, and she's speaking from the perspective of a state assemblywoman that actually supports this idea. I don't know yet how I'm going to vote when my name is called. It's a very difficult decision. To go against everything your constituents are telling you. And I know this council has done that in the past, so I'll decide in a few minutes, I guess.
Thank you, Alderperson. If it helps, I can tell you that we wouldn't be able to, if this developer's agreement does not get passed tonight, we still wouldn't be able to use that money to fix the alleys.
I know that.
It's a different pocket. Same pair of pants maybe, but a different pocket. No more than we could use water and wastewater money to fix alleys or to fund this project. It's just different. Alderperson Shore.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it might be picking up on exactly those points worth going back to last week and revisiting how we ended up with the proposal before us. As was mentioned, the request from Create Portage County was for $500,000, not only $250,000 for Phase 1, but also $250,000 for Phase 2. And we talked about all of these concerns and considerations in Finance Committee last week. And really what, for me anyway, made it that much easier to support was to take this from TIF funding rather than capital budget, and to focus on these upfront needs related to the situation with the raise order. I am comfortable. I know we heard about some of the infrastructure needs for downtown. Many of those are a lot larger. Some of them might be able to be done through surface redesign rather than reconstruction. But above all, this is an investment, as we've been hearing, in the development of new businesses, of economic group, and above all, the thing that I consider one of the most important challenges for a community like ours, and that is keeping young people living here, staying here, making their lives here. If I'm ever asked, what's the most the thing to worry most about for our city, it is it's demography. It's an aging population, and so this is an investment in just the right sort of thing. It's a modest investment at that, and I think we should support it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Alder Jennings and then Alder Morrow.
The comments I made at Finance, I guess I continue to look at the building and Create as separate things, not one and the same. I continue to be an advocate for historic preservation. I remain ambivalent about this whole thing. There's things I'm very frustrated with, money coming out of TIF 5, and as anyone knows, TIF 5 is like my passion, and TIF 5 just continues to get stripped of funding when it can be a major economic engine. However, at the end of the day, and this was an argument I ended up making at Historic Preservation board, when we talked about this quite a while ago, it looked to me like the city would end up paying for this demolition, partial demolition anyway, because if, I assume that if Create cannot complete this, I don't know if they would walk away, but ultimately the city would end up paying for this anyway. So that ends up being, in some sense, a persuading point for me, as well as I feel strongly that preserving that facade for the sake of what that does for the downtown is hugely important. And the city has made it, so following from Alder Dugan, the city has made some sickening decisions about historic buildings, tearing down the post office. I mean, we can name how many buildings were torn down, and that does make me sick. And I don't want to be a part of doing that yet again. But I continue to look at this as two separate things, the building facade and Create. So,
Thank you. Alder Morrow.
As Alder Jennings had also said, if this does not pass, the city is going to be paying for a majority of the majority.
Alder, can we get you to lean into the microphone a little bit more?
As Alder Jennings has also stated, and as the mayor has also stated, if this does not pass, that the city would be on the hook to demolish the Fox anyway. Part of the job of an alder is also to what is the best interest of our entire city. As Kyle Kearns had also said, the downtown was virtually, we had several open areas, and now it's beginning to come back. Now it is beginning to also come on back. I feel well with this because it will be coming out of TIF money, but I would be totally against it coming out of the capital budget. Our department heads each year, the thing that we always hear is the budget's tight, and so as long as it would come out of the TIF as long as it would come out of TIF, and this is what TIF is really for, is to try to develop more businesses in our area to also keep people here. That's why I would actually be for this.
Thank you. Okay. Alderperson Zarazua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a letter from Ryan Wanta, who said he's been involved with the Live Work development in District 4, and he expressed his support also in us moving forward with this agreement. I just want to say, obviously we've heard so many great stories about all the things Create has done for the community, but I also feel, I have a lot of older constituents in my area who do have that emotional connection to the Fox Theater and really just want to see that space be a usable part of downtown again. But definitely the biggest picture is looking at this as economic development, and anytime we're making this kind of agreement, we don't know what the future holds, but we definitely all want to see this be something that grows, adds to our tax base, and the long-term effect, of course, helping with our capital budget so that we can afford the things that Chief Finn is looking for in the budget. So I'm obviously the newest council member. This is the biggest decision that I've had to face so far, but just seeing the overwhelming support around this, I think makes it easier to make the decision.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion to, let's go with Alder Slowinski and then Alder Nabel.
I reviewed the agreement that was in the packet over the weekend, and then I received this from Corey just right before the meeting. And I was just wondering, maybe just for not only myself, but just for the general public, could you kind of just do a brief summary of how the city's protected in this amendment, or this, amendment to the original agreement?
Sure. So,
as far as that 150,000, if you could just maybe a summary.
Yeah, so they are required to secure the first $150,000 of the agreement in some way. They're left with a couple of options. One is a guarantee by somebody who does have the ability to pay that $150,000 readily. Otherwise, they could also use a bank letter of credit, which is essentially a bank saying that, yeah, we're going to agree to guarantee $150,000 for you on behalf of this person or this entity, or we could also take a security interest in either real estate or a different financial asset. Some of the requirements are that, the value has to be easily determinable as at least the $150,000. It has to be unencumbered, and it has to be something that you can reasonably be able to liquidate in a timely manner. So basically, that's what we're looking for there. And then as far as the sufficiency of that guarantee or that collateral, that's delegated to both the city attorney and myself to review that and to make sure that, for instance, if it's a personal guarantee, that it is somebody that truly does have the ability to pay the $150,000, because otherwise, if you have a guarantee from somebody who's not able to pay that amount of money, then it doesn't really do you much good. So we do have those provisions in place specifically to protect the city, because certainly I think that the mandate that we've sort of gotten is to make sure that if we do this, that we still protect the city and still protect the amount of exposure that the city could potentially have, especially if the project would not move forward.
So, again, in summary.
Sorry.
I was looking for something
Why don't you summarize it?
It doesn't happen.
Basically, the city's going to basically be kind of sticking our necks out with about $100,000.
Yes,
and then
yes.
we will basically release the other 150 when 75% of phase 2 is completed.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
Nice job.
And so, I voted no at finance just for this simple reason. I wanted to make sure that the city was protected, and that this whole development was going to be moved forward, and that we would we wouldn't be stuck holding the I guess, I don't know, black and better. Yeah, basically looking like the bad person that we invested all this money and then the project never moved forward. So I mean, the way the development agreement is written, and I'm in support of it. I do believe that the community's behind this project. I think it's going to be a great project. It's a win-win for the city, I believe. I mean, I need to echo Alder Jennings' comments regarding the historic preservation. My biggest fear with this whole thing is, it was referenced last week, something about the missing tooth downtown, having that big gap in our main street. And, that's the last thing I don't think any one of us wants to see, is this, so again, I'm going to support this now that this is in there. I have one question for Mr. Wright, though, regarding, I know President Johnson had referenced it with their business plan regarding long-term maintenance and just operations of this once it is up and running. I know Corey had made the mention of, are we going to be required to, put more funding towards this once it's up and running? I guess that's a question.
So I'm going to give you a real brief answer on that, Alderperson. The answer is no. We are not going to be required.
Okay.
But I will let Director Wright speak to the anticipated costs, operational costs, and if the Idea Center is able to support those additional costs, should there be any.
Yeah, one of the benefits of the way this project has played out is we actually have been able to test the business model for 3 years in the space we're currently in, and obviously costs will shift in the process of that. But we recently calculated about $96,000 of expenses that Create has paid over the last about 5 years to support the Fox in its current format, and so we've been paying maintenance costs, taxes, insurance costs. We did temporary repairs to the roof. We've paid heat for a while there was still heat there. And so again, feasibility studies, other things along those lines. And so one thing is that we actually have been paying a significant amount of maintenance cost already with our current budgets. The other big thing is that we will grow significantly our capacity to raise revenue with this space. That's part of what we're excited about, is this will make Create much more sustainable and will allow us to raise our own revenues in the process of that. And obviously the hope for us is then to not rely as heavily on the city as we have to right now. So, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
I just have one more comment.
Sure.
And I just want to basically go on the record as well, stating that I would not support this if this was requested to come out of capital, and that, the monies that are funding this $250,000, I believe, is, money that should be spent on economic development such as this.
Thank you. Alderperson Nabel, then Alderperson Phillips again.
Pretty much the same thing. Alder Slawinski pretty much summed up. I really wanted to have some of those explained a little bit more, summarized, and they were very well done by Mr. Slawinski. And also that I would also say it would not be for this if it was coming out of the capital. But I did want to ask, I remember when we first started talking about Create, when I first heard about it, the city was asked for $30,000 to help support Create, and I think Portage County gave maybe $8,000. Has that been that we've been doing that every year? Was that 1 year time? I'm just trying to get an idea how long have we been supporting taxpayer-wise or out of our capital budget have we been putting towards Create to get it started and running?
So currently it was $10,000 per year. The first time we did it was a 3-year commitment for $30,000 over the course of 3 years. We renewed that, and it is incorporated into the current operating budget right now annually.
So we pay $1,000 then every year.
Yeah, $10,000.
Sorry, and is anybody else doing that, like Plover or Portage?
I can't speak to what Plover does. I can tell you that Portage County is currently providing a location. And I don't know what the value of that would be, but Director Wright, I'm sure, has some of that information for you. Director.
Portage County gives us $5,000 a year currently, but also, again, as Weeza pointed out, they've also given us free access to the space for the last 3 years as well. We are in conversations with Plover about this, but currently they do not make a contribution.
I would just like to say that I'd like to see that really encouraged, because as taxpayers and as many things that we've seen happen through other entities that City of Stevens Point is talked about as being, well, like the county is saying, we're not really the center, but we really are the center, and so.
But we're really the center.
But we're really the center. I just want to make sure.
We didn't hear a lot of Plover addresses.
Yes, so I just want to say we are the center.
Everything points here.
There you go. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Phillips.
Well, I guess I'll put it really short. This is
Great, thank you.
This is an education center, and I don't think the taxpayers should be funding an education center for the reasons we do not give to Pacelli High School. We don't give money to any other nonprofit organization, which does great community work here. The Lutheran churches, St. Paul's, we don't give them any money. Look at the tens of thousands of people that came out of that place, kids. We don't give them any money. We kind of fell into the trap here. The old trap is ask for twice as much as you want. You'll get half, and everybody will be happy. That's just what happened here. They wanted $250. They said ask for $500, and then we'll feel good because we only gave them $250. We were held hostage because we need to give money before anybody else will. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. And I think it's such an elaborate business plan. I don't know why they need help from the city to do it. If you looked at their business plan, it's fantastic. Why do they need help from the city? The city taxpayers. Doesn't make a lot of sense. The end.
Thank you. Alderperson, I personally wouldn't call it an education center, and definitely not something that we would normally consider an education center like a school. I would encourage you to contact Director Wright and take a tour of the facility and see exactly what it's all about. I know they have several weekly meetings there. I'm sure you could attend one of those as well. President Johnson, one more time, then Alderperson Kneebone, one more time.
Quickly, because we do allocate out funds to other community groups, the Business Council, the Humane Society, others. I would suggest as we consider those things, we consider a scope of services that we wish to receive from those, and then have reports back on the investment that we have in those organizations. That's a discussion for another time, but I think it's an important one that we need to have.
Thank you. And I know that CREATE has given us updates.
Right.
We've had them present at council here, so we'll continue to do that. Alderperson Kneebone.
Yeah, just a quick question. I believe, my understanding is that if nothing happens, the city would be on the hook for the demolition, or is there a ballpark figure
for the demolition?
Sure, and I'll be happy to address that. So the city would not be on the hook. There is a likelihood, and let me give you a scenario, and you read into it what you want. If nothing happens, the raise order goes through. If the current owner is unable to pay for the raise, the service will be contracted out by the city, the raise will happen, and that money will then, the cost of that project will go on the tax bill. If after, I think it's 3 years of unpaid taxes, the county takes that parcel through tax deed and then makes whomever they can whole with whatever they sell it for. So there's a likelihood, in my opinion, that the city could be on the hook for that cost. The upside, if there is one, is we would likely then be able to get the vacant property or the missing tooth, as Alderperson Slawinski said, to put some sort of redevelopment in there, which probably wouldn't happen without some sort of incentive anyway. Before Director Ostrowski left, he did a little research and contacted a few people to say, about what would it cost to tear this thing down? And the estimate was about $250,000, which is why that number works for us. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
It's not a guarantee that the city would be on the hook for it, but it seems to me at least to be a likely possible scenario should nothing happen.
Well, it sounds like it'd be better to preserve than
And that's why I had mentioned before that I'd like to breathe some new life into it rather
for
than...
basically the same amount of money.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think everybody's spoken at least once. Alder Phillips for number 3.
One clarification.
Thank you.
You said if they don't have the money to raise the building.
Right.
They have $1.3 million.
They do not. The owner of the building is Fox on Main.
Where they get the number from?
LLC. Is that correct, Corey?
Correct. Yes.
The building is owned by Fox on Main LLC. The $1 million that's raised is going through CREATE Portage County. Different entities.
Ooh.
I think it's commitments, not cash.
Yeah.
Well,
It's on paper as
Have the
different
money.
entities. So there are a number of scenarios that could happen. You can guess as good as I do. Okay. We have the developers agreement in front of you. We have a motion and a second to approve it. If you are in favor of that developers agreement, vote yes. If you are opposed, vote no. I see Alderperson Kneebone still making up her mind. The clerk will call the roll so you have a little time.
Exactly.
Jennings.
Yes.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Yes.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
No.
Morrow.
Aye.
10-1.
10-1, the developers agreement is approved. Thank you all very much for being patient. It's 9:30 right now. We have several items left on the agenda. Does any alderperson need a recess?
Yes.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute recess. Be back at 9:34.
Having had the luxury of having a paper like the Dallas Morning News.
All right, we still have several items on the agenda. We'll move on to item number 8, which is on page 88 of your packets, and that is the preliminary resolution for the sanitary sewer project on East Maria. Director Lemke, do you have anything to add?
It's relatively straightforward. Some recently annexed properties want sewer service, so this is the cost to extend that sewer service.
Okay. Alderpersons, what are your wishes? Alderperson Phillips.
Move approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Dugan. Discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Morrow.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0, that is adopted. On page 90, you'll find item 9, which is a resolution for land dedication acceptance north of 3313 and 3319 East Maria Drive. What are your wishes? Alder Phillips.
Move approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Alder Dugan. Discussion. Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
11-0, that is approved. Item number 10 is on page 96. That is also a resolution for land dedication east of 612 2nd Street North. Alder Morrow.
Move approval of the resolution.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Kneebone. Discussion there? Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Morrow. Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye. Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0, that is adopted. On page 102, you'll find item number 11, which is a resolution to modify the planned development plan for Schmeekley Trail subdivision with the parcels identified in the agenda. Alder Jennings.
Move to approve.
So, seconded by Alderperson Morrow. Discussion? Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
11-0, that is adopted. Item number 12 is an ordinance amendment for Chapter 24, Public Peace and Offenses, Section 24.56, possession of non-tobacco smoking products by minors, to include vaping and e-cigarettes. Alderperson Kneebone.
I would move approval of that ordinance amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by Zarazua. Discussion. Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Morrow.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0, that's adopted. On page 110, you'll find item number 13, which is an ordinance amendment regarding parking, 9.05 section of our revised municipal code, creating and changing parking time zones in various locations. Alder Phillips.
Move approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
11-0, that's adopted. Item number 14 is an ordinance amendment for Chapter 23 regarding zoning to rezone an unaddressed parcel west of Vine Street and Moses Crossing from R2 Single Family Residence District to Planned Development District. Alder Morrow.
Move approval of the ordinance amendment.
Thank you. Seconded by President Johnson. Discussion there?
This is in my area. And it's nice that this is finally getting resolved to expand those lots.
Perfect, thank you. Any other discussion? Alder Dugan.
Yeah, I just thought it might be important for Alder Morrow or someone else to explain to those listening and watching later what's going on here, because there was some confusion at one of the meetings.
You could certainly do that, Alder Dugan, if you wish.
Yeah, you could do it better.
Okay, why don't we have Kyle Kearns come up here and just give a real brief recap, please, because I know we talked about this at Planning Commission as well.
Yeah, there was some confusion. I think some of the neighbors thought that this was going to be multifamily. This area is Zone Plan Development District, and there's a sliver of land behind a few of those lots in Smeekley Trails that's owned by one of the same owners of 3 of the lots. They want to combine that sliver of land to those existing 3 lots, but because they're separate zones, it would create split zone parcels, and from a zoning standpoint, you do not want a split zone parcel. So they're requesting to rezone it to Plan Development District, so there's a zoning that's consistent. I will note that the Plan Development District zoning, when it was adopted back in 08 or 06, it identified the uses within the underlying R2 zoning district, so they would only be permitted to construct single-family homes in this instance and a few other minor uses. They could not do multifamily or 2-family.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
and just
very
to add to that, the intent is that that little sliver of land will get divided equally amongst the existing owners, with one portion being dedicated as a donation to the Smeekley Reserve. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion to approve. If you are in favor, vote yes. If you are opposed, vote no, and the clerk can call the roll.
Morrow. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0, that's adopted. Item number 15 has been previously addressed. Item number 16 is on page 125, and that's a resolution for conditional use permit of the Smeekley Reserve Visitors Center, which just had its grand opening, to construct solar panels with a reduced setback on an unaddressed parcel near 2419 North Point Drive. President Johnson.
Motion to approve the conditional use permit.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Morrow. Discussion there? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Morrow. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
Dalton.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
11-0, that's adopted. Alderperson Nabel, I saw the look. Several hands went up.
Like, how many
I
times?
called on Alderperson Morrow for the second because it's his district.
No, I meant just been like, I don't know how many times.
Oh, I'm sorry. I watched for the hands to go up and do my best. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, though, for taking a participating role. Item number 17 is extending or amending the options to purchase land for East Park Commerce Center with the parcel IDs identified in the agenda. Alderpersons, what are your wishes? Alderperson Morrow?
Move to approve the extending amendment options.
Thank you. Do we have a second, Alderperson Nabel? Seconded by Alderperson Nabel. Wait for that.
Thank you.
Any discussion there?
I didn't think I was going to call on.
Okay. Hearing no discussion, if you're in favor of extending and amending those options, you'll vote yes. If you're opposed, vote no, and the clerk will call the roll.
Jennings.
No.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Zarazua.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Dalton.
No.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
9-2.
9-2, that is approved. Item 18 and 19 were previously addressed to the agenda. That means our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 9:45.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.